Thoughtful white people know they are inferior to black people. Anyone who has studied the genetic phase of biology knows that white is considered recessive and black is considered dominant. Strong coffee, you ask for black coffee. If you want it light, you want it weak, integrated with white milk. Just like these Negroes who weaken themselves and their race by this intermixing with whites. If you want bread with no nutritional value, you ask for white bread. All the good that was in it has been bleached out of it, and it will constipate you. If you want pure flour, you ask for dark flour, whole wheat flour. If you want pure sugar, you want dark sugar.
Such was the emotional philosophy of the man who called himself Malcolm X, the man shot dead in New York on Sunday. In the 48 hours since he was murdered, police have arrested 6 men as murderers and accomplices. Today in Harlem, New York's Negro quarter, the mosque used by black Muslims was blown up by a bomb and set on fire. And extra squads of armed riot police have been moved in to patrol the streets. All this because of the murder of one man. So tonight, World in Action examines the life and times of that man.
Malcolm X was a colored man. He was murdered by other colored men. Yet he died as the latest casualty in America's grim and bloody battle between white men and black men. And many Negroes have no doubt in their minds who is to blame. Among them, the writer James Baldwin, who spoke to World in Action last night.
It's not a question, you see, of trying, of now trying to throw stones, And I'm not saying that you're wicked or that I will never forgive you. That is not the point. The point is that, in fact, you did create, your history created black Englishmen. Your history is partly responsible for the situation of the American Negro. You, if I may say so, you, the English, helped to settle America. The doctrine of white supremacy, one can say a great many things against America, but one cannot say the doctrine of white supremacy was born there. It was carried there. It came from Europe.
Malcolm X himself would have agreed, for he too carried in his heart the bitterness of the colored man against the white European races.
In the past, because Europe was in power, or the European was in power, and the center of power was based in Europe, and when I say Europe, I mean England, all of them, same thing, the European. The European, being in the position of power, had one yardstick. He didn't use anybody else's yardstick. His yardstick was the yardstick. His definition was the definition. What he said was all there was to be said. The non-Europeans weren't in a position to say anything. They weren't in a position to use their own brain and come up with their own definition. They weren't in a position even to bring their yardstick out of the closet. But what has happened, and most Europeans don't realize it, time has changed. And time has changed, the power has changed. Wherein all the power used to be centered in Europe, it's not centered in Europe anymore. It has divided itself up and is centered in different parts of this earth today. Much of it is in Asia. Much of it is in Africa. It has shifted. And as the people in Africa and Asia get some power of their own, they get a mind of their own. They start seeing with their own eyes and listening with their own ears and speaking with their own mouth and coming to definitions from their own brain. The European definition now isn't necessarily the definition. The European yardstick now isn't necessarily the yardstick. And what the European calls racialism isn't necessarily racialism. And what the European calls brotherhood isn't necessarily brotherhood.
Malcolm X was like most of America's 20 million Negroes who feel they have little cause for feeling any brotherhood towards the white man. And in his case, ironically, it was partly because he had some white blood in him. For Malcolm X claimed that his grandmother had been raped by a white landlord and his own racial purity thus defiled. In his writings, he was vehement about this. His quotations from here on in this program are spoken by an actor.
I hate every drop of white blood in me because it's the blood of a white rapist.
Malcolm X was born Malcolm Little, one of the 10 children of the Reverend Earl Little, a Baptist preacher in Omaha, Nebraska. When Malcolm was only 4, he saw the family home burnt to the ground by the white extremists of the Ku Klux Klan. And when he was still only 6, his father was killed by a tramcar, deliberately pushed by a white man, Malcolm claimed. Malcolm left school when he was 13 and began housebreaking. He was soon arrested and sent to a detention center for 2 years. When he came out, he drifted to New York and took to gambling and dope, and then burglary again. He was caught once more and went to prison for 7 years. When Malcolm Little came out of prison, he changed his name to Malcolm X. He no longer wanted a slave owner's name, he said. And as Malcolm X, he joined the Black Muslims.
This sect, teaching Mohammedanism to Negroes, was run then, as now, by the self-styled prophet Elijah Muhammad, formerly Poole by surname. The main aims of the Black Muslims were to establish a separate black nation within the United States, and there was no believer more fervent than Malcolm X.
The white man should give us several states here on American soil, where those of us who wish to can go and set up our own government, our own economic system, our own civilization. Since we have given over 300 years of our slave labor to the white man's America, helped to build it up for him, it's only right that white America should give us everything we need in finance and materials for the next 25 years, until our own nation is able to stand on its feet.
Converts to the Black Muslims were not hard to find. For in those days, just after World War II, the American Negro was beginning the struggle to end 300 years of slavery and second-class citizenship. Around him, he saw wealth and power almost exclusively in the hands of the whites. Shops had 7,000-pound midget submarines for sale to oil millionaires, and special hats for dogs at £5 a time. Art and culture were still largely the prerogative of the white man.
On the other hand, the Negroes remained undereducated and underprivileged, crammed together in slums like New York's Harlem, a Negro ghetto. And too often, eking out life in a shantytown shack on a diet of beans doled out by government charity. Amid such inequalities, Malcolm X preached his gospel.
At the bottom of the social heap is the black man in the big city ghetto. He lives night and day with the rats and cockroaches and drowns himself with alcohol and drugs himself with dope to try and forget where and what he is. That Negro has given up all hope. He's the hardest one for us to reach because he's the deepest in the mud. But when you get him, you've got the best kind of Muslim, because he makes the most drastic change. He's the most fearless. He will stand the longest. He has nothing to lose, even his life, because he didn't have that in the first place.
Gradually, the Negro revolt took shape. In August 1963, it culminated with the March on Washington, a massive display of disciplined resentment by 250,000 Negroes. President John F. Kennedy's support before the United Nations.
Man does not live by bread alone, and the members of this organization are committed by the Charter to promote and respect human rights. Those rights are not respected when a Buddhist priest is driven from his pagoda, when a synagogue is shut down, when a Protestant church cannot open a mission, when a cardinal is forced into hiding, or when a crowded church service is bombed. The United States of America is opposed to discrimination and persecution on grounds of race and religion anywhere in the world, including our own nation.
Malcolm X, by now second in command of the Black Muslims and struggling to seize the leadership, refused to accept such words of good faith.
A man who tosses worms in the river isn't necessarily a friend of the fish. All the fish who take him for a friend, who think the worm's got no hook in it, usually end up in the frying pan. All these things dangled before us by the white liberal posing as a friend and benefactor have turned out to be nothing but bait to make us think we're making progress. The promises have never been fulfilled. We have received only tokens, substitutes, trickery, and deceit.
3 months after the March on Washington, John F. Kennedy was dead, shot down in Dallas, Texas by Lee Harvey Oswald. And Oswald himself was to be the next victim. At the hands of Jack Ruby, a local nightclub owner, Malcolm X was one of the first to crow.
The chickens are coming home to roost.
That incautious remark lost him all chances of taking over the black Muslims, for Elijah Muhammad seized on it as a pretext for shocked horror and forced him out. Malcolm X now set up his own breakaway movement, the Black Nationalists, but most of his former followers refused to join him.
I think that Muhammad Ali is a very wonderful brother, and that he is a champion in every sense of the word. And the thing that he's running into some trouble in is that he has accepted the religion of Islam and is a follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And today, since the coming of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we are respecting black. We look up to black. We are not ashamed of being black. And we are seeking the friendship and brotherhood of black people, such as we've never done before. Up until this time, we have been serving the white man, who we know today to be a race of devils. Among the white race, and all of them are devils, but among them, the ones that they themselves rejected, the most wicked and undesirable of the white race, was put out into this part of the world that we now call America. And we have been a victim to such a character for the past 400 years. And therefore...
You mean the worst devils are in America?
Right here in America. He's the worst of them all. So our Lord ain't...
The background to discussions like this is given in a recent report on Harlem by a group of Negro intellectuals. According to this report, the rate of juvenile delinquency in Harlem is twice the rate of the rest of New York City, and it's increasing more rapidly. Venereal disease among youths runs at about 6 times the city rate. Infant mortality is twice the city rate. The murder rate is 6 times as great, but the suicide is normal by New York standards. The average family income is £1,200 a year compared with $2,000 for the rest of the city. Twice as many homes are officially designated as overcrowded, and 4 times as many deteriorated. 100 people live on each acre. Rents are higher than anywhere else for worse accommodation, and prices in the shops are higher too. Among the teenagers, there are 14 fighting gangs known to the welfare authorities, and practically all of the property in Black Harlem is owned by whites.
I have told us that we should expect some kind of change, complete resurrection of the dead, by 1970. And we can see signs of that now. The Muhammad Speak newspaper. Now, this newspaper says that America is falling. The time has come, as Honorable Elijah Muhammad has pointed out, that the white man can no longer provide jobs or enough jobs for his own people, much less of that of the so-called American Negro. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad's solution is the right one. That is separation. By nature, we are separate. That's a thing that would be a natural law, that we should be separate. And it is taking place all over the earth. Even in this country, you will find that the people that hold to their culture and their refinement are separate and apart. Such as the Italians, the Jews, and whatnot, they have their own tradition and their own custom. The only people that are held like a captive nation is the so-called American Negro.
We've been here in America for 400 years. And for 310 years of that 400 years enslavement, we weren't paid a payday. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, therefore, it is only just on the part of the white man to, if we are separated and when we are separated, that he should give us enough provisions to last us for 25 years. This is only right. This is only proper. After all, if a man work on your job, you should give him a decent salary. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says then after we are in this land with provisions for 25 years, if after 25 years we haven't shown ourselves to be worthy of independence, then what the white man should do is come in and mow us down, because we won't be worthy of independence or having anything of our own after 25 years. We have enough power to do for ourselves like other people are doing for themselves. If 5 million people in Africa, in Ghana can do for themselves, if 5 million in Cuba can do for themselves, then we feel that 22 million so-called Negroes in America can build us an independent government, an independent nation right here in America, if need be. If not, we'll do it someplace else.
Malcolm X is the type of traitor that once you experience such a person as that, and he had reached a high level of recognition and respect that he had gained, he also had gone out and exposed the white man. Now we don't know who can trust him. We do know that we can't trust him because he lived much better than the rank and file Muslim. All of us praised Malcolm X and supported him, and we made him to be the man that he was. But now he went against that. I'm certain that we can't trust him, and I doubt that the civil writers can trust him, and I don't believe that the white man can trust him.
You would think.
Malcolm X, however, began to gather around him the most violent and fanatical of the black Muslims, and he began to attack all the more moderate Negroes, men like the civil rights leader, the Reverend Martin Luther King. To men such as this, he applied the label of Uncle Tom, the Negro's ultimate term of scorn for those of his fellows who cooperate with the white man.
There's plenty wrong with Negroes. They have no society. They're robots, automatons, no mind of their own. I hate to say that about us, but it's the truth. They are black body with a white brain, like the monster Frankenstein. The top part is your bourgeois Negro. He's your integrator. He's his poor black brothers. He's usually so deep in debt from trying to copy the white man's social habits that he doesn't have time to worry about nothing else. They buy the most expensive clothes and cars and eat the cheapest food. They act more like the white man than the white man does himself.
When is the time of freedom? The time is now!
I know the time is near when the white man will be finished. The signs are all around us. The white man has brainwashed himself into believing that all the black people in the world want to be cuddled up next to him. When we tell him we don't want to be around him, we don't want to be like he is, he's staggered. It makes him re-evaluate his 300-year myth about the black man. What I want to know is how the white man, with the blood of black people dripping off his fingers, can have the audacity to be asking black people, do they hate him? That takes a lot of nerve. Sir, the point I make is that all over the world, the old day of standing in fear and trembling before the almighty white man is gone.
It was against this background of hardening attitudes that Malcolm X came to Britain 2 weeks ago on a lecture tour. And among the places he visited was Smethwick, a town too often associated with racial hatred in Britain. And while he was abroad, his opponents at home began to plot against him. He flew back to America 10 days ago, and only a few hours after his return, his enemies struck the first blow. While Malcolm X and his wife and their 4 children slept, 3 petrol bombs were flung into the house. The house was badly damaged. The Malcolm X's escaped. But for Malcolm X, it was a brief reprieve. Last Sunday at 3:21 p.m. New York time, 8:21 in the evening over here, he rose to speak to his followers in Harlem. 1 minute later, he was shot down by 10 bullets. 18 minutes later, he was dead. For Malcolm X, too, the chickens had come home to roost.
The savagery of the murder of Malcolm X is appalling enough. The real tragedy, though, is not in the form of his death, but in the manner of his life. For behind him, Malcolm X left an America in which he had played his own part in making it more difficult for black man and white man to live together. Even a liberal such as James Baldwin recognizes this.
It's really very difficult to expect that a whole race of people, a whole group of people, are all, by some miracle, turn into, impeccable Christians. One would like that to be true. But Negroes, after all, human beings, it is very difficult, you do have to protect your wife and your child and your house. You are under the obligation to do that, and you may have to use a gun to do it.
In America today, extremists on both sides make the chances of having to use that gun greater. There, the color of a man's skin threatens to become a religion. For Malcolm X and his kind have succeeded even in taking racialism to the altar.
Only the poor brainwashed American Negro has been made to believe that Christ was white, to maneuver him into worshiping the white man. Christ wasn't white. Christ was a black man.
The gospels of hatred such as that lessen the chances of demonstrations like this being held in faith and in peace. And each day they heighten the chances of too many funerals like this.
We want our freedom now. I don't want to have to go to another memorial. I'm tired of funerals. Tired of it. Got to stand up.
The words of the late Malcolm X were spoken by Barry Johnson.